Good evening, everybody. Our top stories: radical Dems ramping up their orchestrated political and media smear campaign against Judge Kavanaugh in their craven, desperate, last-minute campaign to try to block the Senate's confirmation of his Supreme Court appointment.
These people in Congress right now, in that Senate Judiciary Committee, these white men, old, by the way, are not protecting women. They're protecting a man who is probably guilty.
I understand why a president who has 13 credible sexual assault allegations against him may not want to order somebody to investigate a judge he nominated.
What the Republicans doing is outrageous. They are creating a false choice. They are trying to bully her into testifying on Monday.
Kavanaugh's accuser still unwilling to come forward and testify before the Senate. Her attorney and the Senate Dems trying to set conditions and demands outside the Judiciary Committee's announced timetable and requirements. We take up the latest on the Supreme Court fight tonight. Republican strategist Ed Rollins with us. Also tonight, President Trump has finally had it with the cowardly and incompetent, feckless GOP congressional leadership, as Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell failed to deliver a responsible budget, and still they refuse to fund the president's campaign promise to build the border wall. President Trump demanding Republicans get tough and get with his program.
We have to get the Republicans. We'll get things we want. We've started the wall. Everybody wants the wall. We've spent $3.2 billion on the wall. We've got to get the rest of the funding. We're going to get it.
And the Department of Justice and FBI still have not complied with the president's direct order to declassify documents related to the origins of the Russia witch hunt. Representative Matt Gaetz joins us here tonight to talk about the crisis of leadership at the Department of Justice, the FBI, and the intelligence community. Our top story: the campaign of the radical left to try to block the Senate confirmation of Judge Brett Kavanaugh. The Dems sinking to unprecedented depths of despicable political dirty tricks to keep Judge Kavanaugh off the Supreme Court, those efforts reaching a fever pitch today. Kavanaugh telling Senator Grassley that he will be present Monday for the scheduled hearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee, but his accuser is still holding out unless her demands are met by the committee, while Senate Dems are demanding a new FBI investigation. Fox News congressional correspondent Mike Emanuel has our report from Washington.
Why isn't Judge Kavanaugh asking for an FBI investigation if he has nothing to hide?
Pressure is building, with Republicans urging Professor Christine Blasey Ford to speak to the Judiciary Committee evaluating Judge Brett Kavanaugh's nomination on Monday.
I think it's not fair to Judge Kavanaugh for her not to come forward and testify. Both of them need to testify under oath next Monday before the Judiciary Committee.
Ford's attorney Deborah Katz emailed committee leaders writing, quote, "She wishes to testify provided that we can agree on terms that are fair and which ensure her safety. A hearing on Monday is not possible, and the committee's insistence that it occur then is arbitrary in any event." Democrats say Professor Ford is not being treated fairly.
I consider that to be bullying. I consider that to be disregarding. I consider that to be something set up for failure. They would like a he said, she said scenario.
Capitol Police report at least 56 people were arrested today protesting outside Chairman Grassley's office and elsewhere. There are also signs of friction between Grassley and Judiciary's top Democrat Dianne Feinstein, with Grassley writing he still wants to see Professor Ford's letter that Feinstein received approximately 7 weeks ago, noting that the contents of the letter were leaked only last week when it appeared the Senate was about to confirm Judge Kavanaugh. And Judiciary Republican staff tweeting today, on Monday, staff interviewed Judge Kavanaugh under penalty of felony. Democratic staff was invited and could have asked any question of Judge Kavanaugh. They declined to participate. Other Republicans say if a hearing doesn't happen, that is Professor Ford's choice.
Number one, she shouldn't be criticized for not doing it. Number two, we can't force her and we shouldn't try to. But then the Senate has to move forward based on the information we have before us.
Missouri Democrat Senator Claire McCaskill announced on Twitter she's a no on Kavanaugh. And the votes of other red state Democrats like West Virginia's Joe Manchin, Indiana's Joe Donnelly, and North Dakota's Heidi Heitkamp are unclear at this stage.
While Professor Ford's attorney has raised concerns about her client's safety, Fox has reviewed vulgar and threatening email messages sent to Judge Kavanaugh and his wife in recent days. They are very graphic. Lou?
But no investigation sought on their behalf from the FBI. Mike Emanuel from Capitol Hill. Thank you very much, Mike. The Trump economy is booming, and it's showing no signs of slowing, despite what some media naysayers have been trying to say about rising trade tensions with China. Investors showing absolutely no signs of anxiety, concern. Today, as both the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500 closed at a record high. For the Dow, it's the 100th time since President Trump's election. Not to be outdone, the S&P closing at a new all-time high, as I said as well. And not the only good news. Certainly, jobless claims falling to a 49-year low, the third straight week in which it has been at an almost half-century low level. With such strong numbers for the president's economy, what could the Dems possibly run on in the midterms? What would it be? Joining us tonight, Congressman Matt Gaetz, member of the House Judiciary Committee, the Freedom Caucus. Congressman, great to have you with us. I mean, we look at this economy that I just reported on and have been reporting on for all of these months since the president was elected. I don't understand what the Democrats have to say about the president's leadership and the Republican governorship of both the House and the Senate.
Well, you know, the Democrats keep trying to make the argument that Donald Trump is incompetent, but we continue to see the fruits of his labor and the work of his administration in coordination with the Republican Congress. If Democrats were to win in the midterms, we would face total chaos, Lou. Nothing would get done. No budgets would be passed. All of the special interests would continue to love the gridlock. Immigration would continue to be a problem as illegals just came across our border with no consequence. Do we really want that? Do we want endless impeachment hearings? I think the American people want to continue the progress, but here's the problem for Republicans. We've got to make new promises. We can't just expect people to get up and vote for us based on what we've done in the past. We've got to promise to fulfill this Trump agenda.
Yeah, and you know, you've got a guy in the House. We've mentioned Speaker Ryan before, haven't we? I mean, we have had that discussion.
I think you've brought him up a time or two on your show.
Well, and here we go again. And the president today brought up that leadership, feckless leadership in the House. And I'm just confused about why you all have continued to permit him to sit in the office that he resigned. He's doing no one any good. He's blocking the president's wall, as the president pointed out today, one of the cornerstone promises of his presidential campaign. What are the Republicans to do?
Well, we are in need of vision, and my colleague Jim Jordan laid out that vision several months ago. He said that with this deadline looming, we should put the wall funding together with prioritizing our troops and our veterans. We should send that over to the Senate and then demand that they take action on it. Here, what we have is, I think, the absence of decision-making, and, you know, my hope is that we continue to make our troops a priority. I mean, I hate when gridlock in Washington results in the people who are downrange fighting for our freedoms not getting what they need, and Trump has always put our troops and our veterans first, and at least we're taking care of that, but I don't think we've been nearly ambitious enough.
Yeah. Without the president's leadership, the Republicans would have precious little to show for their control of both the House and the Senate. I want to turn to what we're now witnessing, and that is the Congress of the United States sending a letter. I should point out the Dems who lead the Congress of the United States, Pelosi, Schumer, Warner, and a fellow by the name of Schiff, wanting well, let's just put this up because it's really remarkable. If we could put up the first full screen here of the DNI and the DOJ agreeing to block White House access. On June 27th, 2018, we wrote to memorialize the verbal assurance that is, Coates and Rosenstein, it's just, and Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, the assurance you provided us The DOJ and FBI would not provide the White House or any of the president's attorneys with access to sensitive information briefed to a small group of designated members. Congressman, I've got to ask you, that looks to me like a confession on paper, overwhelming evidence of a conspiracy to subvert the President of the United States.
I don't know who the hell these people think they are telling executive agencies of the federal government not to be responsive to the commander-in-chief, to the person who leads the executive branch, to the President of the United States. Donald Trump has obligations under the Constitution that can only be met if he has full command and control of the federal government. And I think it's outrageous that you would have that happen. I think it's even more troubling now that you could have people at the FBI and Department of Justice not complying with the president's order to release the information that we've been demanding to have released so that we can get to the bottom of the Obama administration's abuses of the FISA process to spy on the Trump campaign.
Isn't it remarkable the president has ordered the declassification of the documents that you and other congressmen and two committees have sought? And now the Democrats are saying, my gosh, what an abuse of power. How could you possibly allow the President of the United States to declassify all of these documents, notwithstanding the fact that President Obama did precisely the same thing, that is, declassify material that had been classified, and did so to the cheers of the very same people, including, what's his name, Schiff, who is now protesting so loudly. The Dems have reached I think, an absolutely unprecedented low-life level of political chicanery and dirty tricks that they ought to get down and prostrate themselves and apologize to the American people.
Well, let's hope that they don't have allies and co-conspirators at the Department of Justice, at the FBI. Let's hope that people understand the org chart, and they understand that at the top of the org chart is President Donald J. Trump, and he makes these decisions. And by the way, he's right to make this decision, Lou, because we've got to know what information was withheld from the FISA court. We're going to find out a lot of stuff that they were supposed to be told. They never got told, and laws were probably broken.
Yeah, and I think we can all safely say, based on what we already know before even looking at the declassified material, that there is a level of rancid, desperate, toxic political corruption at the leadership level of both the FBI and the Department of Justice and the intelligence community under President Obama. Now it's just a question of producing the evidence, which the president, thank God, has started the process. Congressman, great to have you with us as always. Appreciate it.
Good to see you, Lou. Thank you.
Thank you. Congressman Matt Gaetz. Up next, the loony left choosing to convict Judge Kavanaugh of sexual misconduct. We don't know exactly what the charge is, and we don't think the Democrats have a very good idea of what they're actually doing anyway. But one thing we do know, they're trying desperately to block his confirmation and to keep a great talent off the court.
They're giving her an option. The option is show up Monday or don't show up at all. I consider that to be bullying.
What is happening with the Judiciary Committee is really, I would call it a railroad job. And it's totally unfair.
Her request that the FBI reopen the background investigation into Judge Kavanaugh is a completely reasonable request.
Judge Kavanaugh has not asked to have the FBI review these claims. Is that the reaction of an innocent person? It is not.
Woo, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of intimidated by the two senators. I think they may be trying to bully us. What do you think? We'll take it up with Ed Rollins here when we continue. Stay with us. The radical left-wing Dems stooping to new lows using unsubstantiated claims of sexual misconduct, charging Brett Kavanaugh with some of that. We can't figure out exactly what they're doing. What they are doing is trying to block his confirmation to the highest court in the land.
An admitted sexual abuser sits in the White House who supported an accused child predator for the Senate. Then he nominated this man to the U.S. Supreme Court,
accusing Kavanaugh of sexual assault.
Is that enough to make you sick? That disgusting smear comes from a group led by a fellow by the name of Brian Fallon. He served as Hillary Clinton's campaign press secretary. He served in the Obama administration's corrupt Department of Justice. And he's got sleaze all over him. Reminder, there's 47 days until November 6th elections, and the dirty tricks that are already being pulled out by the Dems. If that isn't enough to get you to vote, well, this thing may be over before it begins. There are too many rhino leaders in Congress who stand for nothing, and it's up to the base to stand for this president. We are now joined by the savant himself, and that is, of course, Ed Rollins, serving as the political director for President Ronald Reagan, Fox News political analyst. Good to see you. I mean, if that ad isn't enough to rile up the base, I don't know what it would take. That is ignorance. That is low-life, disgusting crap.
And totally dishonest. I mean, it's just, and
dishonest, too.
Dishonest, too. Which should have something to do with all of this propaganda that's put out there.
Yeah.
I've been around the game a long time. I've never seen any hearing ever like this one. You've taken a very reputable man who has had a very significant career in Judge Kavanaugh, and they've done everything in this hearing to basically poke, pick.
This is a federal appellate judge on the second highest court in the land.
For 12 years he's been on that.
And he has a record that is absolutely, as President Trump has said, unblemished, period. A distinguished career.
And other than the one woman in California, there's never been anybody else in 6 FBI full-scale checks over the last 24 years who's ever said anything detrimental about him.
Well, she hasn't said it to his face or to the Senate.
She said in this letter that Feinstein.
And by the way, Dianne Feinstein, the senator who brought her into the process, has sat on that letter from her for 2 months, didn't do anything. By the way, the Dems are calling for investigations, but for 2 months they didn't. I mean, the Dems have got plenty of resources. They could have carried out an investigation of their own. They did nothing, and still have done nothing.
And they won't do anything. They didn't show up for when Kavanaugh himself came in to be questioned by the Republican staffers under oath. They didn't even show up. And my sense is she won't show up on Monday. They'll make whatever requirements so severe that she'll say, no, it's too severe, I won't come. If she does that, then I think you march forward. I think
what do you say to these the two senators that have moved out on point, Hirono and Gillibrand of New York? I mean, they're talking like, they're toughs, alley toughs, taking on the world. I mean, this is despicable conduct on their part.
Well, Gillibrand is running for president, and she will do as well as the last senator who had that same seat, Hillary Clinton, did. She won't be the nominee, of course. But that's what her goal is, and they're going to take this issue, and it's all the candidates. It's her, it's Harris, it's all the ones.
Yeah, but meanwhile, why are the Republicans putting up with this nonsense? They are sitting there listening to Hirono and Gillibrand and others talking about bullying. The Republicans haven't anything. They're the ones trying to intimidate. I mean, I feel intimidated by
We've given her the opportunity to come forth. I don't know what her case is, but she has the opportunity to come forth and make it. She's made these charges to the Washington Post
wait a minute. Why should she be allowed to just make these scurrilous charges without any evidence, without any proof whatsoever? I mean, this doesn't make any sense.
I don't argue with that. And the idea that you want the FBI to
Well, shouldn't there be a standard here? You're talking about the Senate of the United States.
Well, I'm not sure of that anymore. There once was a standard, and I can promise you in the old days you wouldn't get away with this. But the new days, they're all cowards. And the truth of the matter is it has to be more than Grassley fighting back. And I think you're letting a good man's reputation be terribly diminished. And the other point I'm going to make, and I cast no aspersions on the woman who's made the charges deliberately, but no one else has ever come forth. No one else has backed her up. No one else has ever said, oh, this was a pattern, this was what this guy did all the time, he was 17, 18 years old. Not one single thing in 6 full-scale investigations has anybody watched forward and said
but we're talking about in the last week or so, and still, even the people who did it initially have backed off saying they do know nothing. They can't remember this, they weren't there,
Right.
And the nominee himself says he thinks it's a case of mistaken identity, which is probably a very nice way to say that, to say a lot of things. Much has been, to me, this thing has gone way too far. The dirty, nasty tricks that have been leveled. Well, Grassley shouldn't give an inch. Do you think he'll back off?
I don't think he'll back off. I think he's a tough man, and I think he's given her until Monday. If she wants to come testify, fine. If she doesn't want to come testify, they're going to march forward.
Yeah, it's time to put a stop to this kind of nonsense. If she's got proof, if she's got evidence, put it forward and let the chips fall where they may.
I agree.
But this innuendo and just plain nastiness has got to stop in this political system. Great to have you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good to see you. A new study from GovPredict showing that Amazon employees, get ready for this, overwhelmingly support Democrats. Since 2006, 90% of political contributions made by Amazon employees go to Democratic political action committees. Amazon employees giving 90% of their money, over $50,000, to 7 politicians, 6 of them Democrats. Do the math. I mean, this is really quite something. You would never dream that Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, then would go out and buy the Washington Post and hit the president 7-8 times a day with that publication. It's shocking, absolutely shocking. Be sure to vote on our poll tonight. The question is, do you believe there's any rational reason for Republicans to put up with any more nonsense from the desperate Dems and their low-life political dirty tricks? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook and follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs tonight. Coming up, Nellie Orr. Well, she doesn't want to testify about her background, her relationships, and what she tried to do to subvert the President of the United States. We'll be talking about that next. Former federal prosecutor Sidney Powell. She says Orr is up to her eyeballs in deep state corruption. We take that up next. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Implications. When will his accuser testify? And will the FBI get involved? Alan Dershowitz brings clarity on Mornings with Maria. Then, the Dow hits new highs. Are you making the most of it? Varney has insight for investors. Tomorrow.
Kim Jong-un wants a second summit with President Trump. South Korean President Moon letting everybody know that Kim told him during their 3-day summit that he also wants Secretary of State Pompeo to visit Pyongyang again to restart denuclearization talks. Moon will be delivering a personal message from Kim to the president next week. They're going to meet at the UN General Assembly while the president and Moon are both in New York. Nellie Orr, who worked for the firm behind the discredited, fraudulent anti-Trump dossier, has refused a number of requests to appear before the House Judiciary and Oversight Committees, refusing to give a deposition. Of course, it was Orr's Justice Department husband, Bruce Orr, who became the back channel for passing along information on the dossier and more from Christopher Steele directly to the FBI. The FBI's former top lawyer, General Counsel James Baker, also refusing to appear before the committees. The Judiciary Committee in particular says it will compel their testimony if it proves necessary. Joining us tonight, former federal prosecutor Sidney Powell. She's the author of the book License to Lie, available in paperback. It can be pre-ordered wherever books are sold, all about the corruption in the U.S. Justice Department. I want to start, Sidney, with, first of all, this memo and the degree to which this letter from half of the Gang of Four, the Democratic half, to the Rod Rosenstein at Justice and Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, and Dan Coates, the DNI, it says this at one point. On June 27, 2018, we wrote to memorialize the verbal assurance you provided us that DOJ and FBI would not provide the White House or any of the president's attorneys with access to sensitive information briefed to a small group of designated members, including, I presume, the so-called Gang of Eight. Now, let's start right there. That looks like not only collusion, it looks like subversion and a conspiracy against the President of the United States, which Christopher Wray, Dan Coates, and Rod Rosenstein signed on to. What do you think?
I think the Democrats just have more hubris than could fit in the Capitol building itself. They want to abolish Article 2 of the Constitution, apparently, which vests in the executive all the power to declassify whatever he wants to declassify and get whatever information he wants to get, which is what he is doing. And Nellie Orr is...
But let me go to the point. That is written evidence of subverting the President of the United States, is it not?
It is. Clearly they're trying to keep information from him that he certainly needs to know.
What else could this president or any president in that situation do but demand that those three leaders of those agencies and departments be fired, fire them straight away? And the Democrats, to me, I don't understand why they wouldn't be picked up by, I mean, who are these people and why should they be tolerated with that kind of conduct?
Well, those Democrats in particular might not have exactly accurately stated what their understanding was with
well, I'd be interested to hear Ray and
FBI.
Rosenstein and Coates deny it. Wouldn't you?
Yes, it would be interesting to hear what they have to say about it. And if I were the president, I would have the information on my desk by noon on Monday or fire all three of them. This business of slow walking the information that he's already ordered them to produce is absurd.
We're also hearing Sarah Carter on this broadcast telling us that it's fairly clear that the FBI and the Department of Justice intend to redact, despite the president's direct order not to redact, those texts amongst all of the key players at the Justice Department and the FBI. They're going to redact material that they may turn over to the president next week. Meanwhile, we understand that all of that information, the text unredacted, the application for the FISA court warrants for surveillance, all are ready to be delivered to the president in their current form, that there is no problem with methods and sources. Your reaction?
Well, there shouldn't be any problem trying to protect methods and sources here because they are corrupt. That's part of the problem with the entire FISA scenario and the abuses that the DOJ and FBI have engaged in here. The sources and methods are part of the corruption. So there better not be any protected in these documents, and there's no reason why they can't have them on the president's desk by noon on Monday, unredacted.
And Sidney, I want to turn to the Kavanaugh hearings and these desperate low-life attempts by the Democrats to derail his confirmation. Your thoughts about Chairman Grassley, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, giving this accuser until 10 a.m. Tomorrow to decide whether or not she will be before the committee Monday and whether or not she will provide by tomorrow at 10 a.m. The testimony that she will give. Your thoughts, your reaction?
Senator Grassley has gone out of his way to try to accommodate Ms. Ford, however she wanted to be accommodated, to get the evidence the committee needs by Monday, if in fact she has any evidence at all other than her statement. They've offered to go to California to sit with her in her own home to hear what she has to say. They've offered to let her testify publicly or privately. They have been over backwards to try to give her an opportunity to share whatever she wants to share with the committee as comfortably and privately as possible. If Senator Feinstein had any real interest in the welfare of this woman, this could all have been done out of the public view in the past 2 months in the process of interviewing Judge Kavanaugh and conducting the hearings. All that investigation that they want could have taken place earlier instead of throwing it out in public at the very last minute in an obviously transparent attempt to derail the nomination and stall past the midterms. We're out of words, Lou, to describe how bad their behavior is. I mean, we're just out of words.
The Dems, you're right. Enough is said. These are the most contemptible tactics ever employed in this process, and we've seen some awfully dirty politics played in the nomination process and the confirmation process for the U.S. Supreme Court. This is a new low for a man who is deserving of far better treatment and certainly gratitude from the country for serving. Sidney Powell, great to have you with us. Thanks so much. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Lou.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Up next, more on the FBI, the Department of Justice's defiance of a presidential direct order to declassify Russia-related documents and text. We'll talk about this for the rest of this show. We'll be talking with two of the best legal minds in the country, Victoria Tensing and Joe DeGenova. Join us here when we continue and examine the deep state and the efforts to subvert this president. We'll be right back. Defiant to the end, the Justice Department and the FBI reportedly are ignoring the president's order for the immediate, unredacted declassification of FISA documents and deep state text. The documents expected to be released and delivered to the White House counsel, we are now told, as early as next week, with redactions. Joining us tonight to assess, to analyze all of this, two of the, as I said earlier, finest legal minds in the country. Victoria Tensing, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division of the Justice Department, former federal prosecutor Joe DeGenova. They're the founding partners of DeGenova and Tensing law firm. Great to have you both here. Let me start with the reports that the FBI, Victoria, and the Justice Department have no intention of turning over to the president anything unredacted.
But we don't know that yet.
We don't know it, but that's what's being reported.
Well, Jay Sekulow says, I heard him being interviewed earlier today, and he said if Ray and Dan Coates and people have some problems with what we're going to want disclosed, then come over to the White House and let's have a discussion, and I'm sure the president will listen to whatever their concerns are. So there seems to be a process there that they should be taking care of, like maybe tonight, tomorrow morning.
Yeah, one would think. Joe, I mean, this sounds very amiable, amicable, except for one thing. This is a direct order from the President of the United States.
Yes, well, I anticipate that the President will get what he wants, subject to the advice that he gets from some people around him like Jay Sekulow. There's no doubt about it that the President has the constitutional authority to order anything to be declassified. He, of course, like anybody else, is very responsible about protecting sources and methods, but we know already from the previously declassified documents from the FBI and the Department of Justice that the only thing that has been redacted is embarrassing information to the Bureau and the Department of Justice under the Obama administration. So it is likely that what Rosenstein and Wray are trying to do is to keep more embarrassing information out of the public domain, and they will not succeed.
Let me make a point, because a lot of these things that we've seen dribble out are these emails between the two lovers, right? Now, nothing in there could have been classified because you can't put classified information on texts with your phone. So why, I don't know why Rosenstein has taken so long to get all of those emails, texts, love messages, whatever they are, out to the public.
By the way, I haven't read a single text out of the 50,000 or so that have been produced, at least for the OIG to this point. I haven't seen a single text between Lisa Page and Peter Strzok that even makes a reference to a love affair, to a dinner, to anything other than, frankly, direct subversion of the President of the United States and participation in a resistance to this president while he was campaigning as well. Have you seen such a text? Because I certainly haven't.
I didn't think about that, but you know, I would have been upset if Joe sends me an email and doesn't say love at the end. I'm a little upset.
I think what's clear is that people involved in the counterintelligence business lead strange private lives, but we do know that those have been kept from the public eye out of, quote, respect for the privacy of Strzok and Page. And let me just say this. I don't give a hoot about the privacy of Strzok and Page.
Well, I don't either. I don't either, Joe, but let me raise this for your consideration as we take a break. And that is the obvious explanation for the huge numbers of text, and we're talking tens of thousands of them, between these two, is that they were lovers. The problem is there's no evidence that they were lovers, and secondly, We're talking about 80 texts a day in which they conspire against the president and the presidential campaign.
Yes.
We'd like to consider even further where the Justice Department and the FBI right now are in light of this new letter from half of the Gang of Eight that seems to suggest that there is a conspiracy against the president to withhold sensitive information, quote unquote, from him, from his counselors and advisors. I'd like to take that up here next as we continue with Victoria and Joe right after these quick messages. We're coming right back. You don't want to miss it. I want to share with you a 2009 executive order signed by President Obama, which expedited the declassification of classified materials to the public. But now his corrupt Attorney General says President Trump doesn't have the authority to declassify important FISA-related documents that could well implicate President Obama and, yes, his Attorney General as well. Eric Holder, that's right, Eric Holder, tweeting this, quote, "This is an especially dangerous abuse of power by this president," referring to President Trump when he was working for Obama. It was quite a different story, saying he places his self-interest above the national security interests of the country. Oh, my goodness. Eric Holder, the only cabinet secretary in history to ever be cited for contempt by the Congress of the United States. We're back with Victoria Tensing and Joe DeGeneva. Great to have you with us, and I appreciate you staying with us to go through some of this heavy lifting. I'd like to first just turn to your reaction to that kind of hypocrisy on the part of Holder, for that matter, Obama and the entire left in this country.
Hey, Lou, Eric Holder sounds like the corrupt Washington Post, which called this declassification order an abuse of presidential power and decried the fact that these things were going to be made public. Now, this is the same Washington Post I was reading that liked to uncover everything about Watergate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The problem that Eric Holder has is that he was part of a cabal, even while out of office, to do in Donald Trump and to abuse the power of the FBI and the Justice Department. But here's the other thing, Lou, just so people don't misunderstand. The president and his lawyers in the White House have absolutely seen the unredacted versions of the FISA documents and some of the text messages. The president knows what he is ordering to be revealed. What he's doing is, he said, now that I know what you guys are covering up, I want this stuff issued to the public. Right. It is now that the DOJ and FBI are coming back and saying, Mr. President, we know you know what's in there. We'd like to not disclose that. That's where we are now. And where we are right now, we are sitting now at that very, the tipping point, the incipient point of what will either be revelation and openness and transparency and honoring the public's right to know in the democracy of this great constitutional republic, or we'll be frustrated again. And that's what makes me so angry when I think about the Department of Justice leaders, the intelligence community under President Obama, the FBI. I mean, this is revulsive, repugnant corruption. Yes, and you know what, Lou? One of the best parts of what's going to happen as a result of this, it's going to be shown that John Brennan and James Clapper were at they were the point of the arrow on disclosing information that they knew was false, that would tarnish Carter Page, who is going to be a very rich man when this is over, and to tarnish a sitting president of the United States. Brennan and Clapper betrayed this country, betrayed their oath of office, and were the tip of the spear on trying to undermine the Constitution of the United States. How dare they suggest that this president is doing that? He's doing the opposite. President Trump is saving the Constitution by revealing how corrupt the FBI and the DOJ under Obama and the intelligence community were under Obama.
And what I fear the most is that the mainstream media is going to ignore it, and there will only be a few of us around that are really talking about about the story, because
I think
let's face it, most of us have been talking about this for months.
Yeah, I understand your fear. I think that the public, once they know what has transpired, this will spread like a wildfire, if you will. Victoria Tenzing, good to have you with us. Joe DeGenova, thank you very much. We appreciate you both.
You bet.
Up next, new information tonight in the battle for Judge Kavanaugh's Supreme Court confirmation. But before we go, a reminder that September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. We urge you to donate whatever you can to the number of organizations who work diligently to provide funding to fight this disease. We're coming right back with much more. Stay with us.
You did it.